podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the No Limits podcast. You can always reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. If you want to be a guest or you know somebody that would be a good guest, you can always contact me. If you have a topic you want me to talk about, I'm happy to do that. And today, I've talked on my podcast about some public speaking I'm going to be doing in the future about trauma. And my guest today is Alex Saenz, and Alex and I kind of know each other from St. Gabriel's Church, and our kids grew up together. Our daughters used to hang out, and Alex and his family suffered a horrific trauma last year. And he was posting on Facebook, and I engaged with him, and we had a conversation. And this is kind of the basis of what I want to go talk to people about. And although it appears to be a negative thing, there's a lot of positive to draw out of it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Alex, welcome to my podcast. I appreciate you kind of putting yourself out there. I know it's not easy. And I don't even know. I'm probably going to choke up 20 times during this podcast, but we're just real, man. So anyway, why don't you introduce yourself, and you can give a little reader's digest of what's going on. And I just feel for your family. I feel so bad for you. And
Thank
but
you.
I
Thank you.
know that you are a God-fearing man, and I really hate the sentence, everything happens for a reason, but it does, right? So do what you tell me a little bit about yourself, and we
Well,
can go from there.
thank you, Ed, first of all, for inviting me to your podcast. And that's the way we did engage over Facebook, because I've used Facebook as a tool to reach out to friends that I haven't seen in years, and it's been incredible to have that connection. It's funny because what we're our family's going through right now is something that we never imagined. In a billion years that we think that our son, our firstborn, um, the child with my namesake, his name is Alejandro, which is my birth name.
Right.
And that something like this could happen. It was so sudden. I'll get into details of how that happened, but what I wanted to talk about today, as we are trying to find ways to find fees. And as we discussed, we started a podcast that we're going to be doing, and this is great that you're talking to here today to try to help people heal. So this podcast, from my point of view, I want to talk about trauma, but also in the positive, like you said. Um, my life started, I was born in Havana, Cuba, and to give you an idea, I was born into chaos. I was born in the midst of a revolution.
Mhm.
My brother came to this country on his own at age 14. We came a few months later. I was born March 27th, 1961, and literally less than a month later, there was the Bay of Pigs invasion. So that was what I grew up with. Uh, my parents were hardworking, uh, great parents who raised me to love this country and to know the ethics of hard work. But that hard work meant I never saw my dad much when I was a teenager. He worked
Right.
the night shift and worked 6 days a week. So I had one day a week off. The reason I'm covering this is that it's important that you understand what happened. As a teenager, I lost both of them. I lost my mom first at age 17, at 18, my dad.
Wow.
When that happened, I made some really bad choices in life. Uh, I took to drugs, alcohol, anything to numb the pain.
Yeah.
And those low vibrational decisions led me to literally living on the streets, going to just through hell. I was able to lift myself up, become a stockbroker, uh, insurance first, stockbroker this, came to LA, and then got married 35 years ago, and everything was going great until the second major trauma in my life. Of course, there's a lot in between, Ed, but
Of course.
but obviously the second trauma was a beautiful Sunday morning. Um, I snuck out of the house. My daughter walked into our bedroom She was staying with us. She lives in Miami, but she had been. Our brother wanted to see her, so she came and spent the night before with my son and his best friend, Nate Russell, one of his best friends. He has several best friends, just kids that love him. When that happened, we got the call. I got a call, and my daughter said, where are you, Dad? I said, well, I snuck out to get bagels. She said, you got to go to Alex's house. A tragedy happened. When she said that, I just turned the car around and started racing to his home right off
Right.
of the 15 out here, a freeway and Mira Mesa or Carroll Canyon Road. As I'm driving, my mind's racing, and I'm thinking something happened to the child, Caillou.
Right.
At that time, my son had a 2-month baby. My second thought was Juliana, his wife, was going through serious postpartum. So I said, oh my God, she did something, or or something happened to her.
Hmm.
And I called my daughter. I'm 1 block away. She goes, where are you? I said, I'm 1 block away. I just need to know what happened. She goes, Alex fainted and he's not responding.
Hmm.
I get there, the paramedics are there. The police weren't very nice to us at that point because I was hysterical, and I was just, is he okay? Is he breathing? When I saw him, I knew it was bad.
Right.
I knew it was bad. We followed them to the hospital. They put us in a separate little room. That was the first sign that I knew things were really bad. And the doctor came in with the worst news you could hear.
Of
I
course.
ended up being hospitalized for 3 days, and and my life upside down. So this is where it gets interesting, is that I had thoughts of drinking. I had thoughts of doing, just really all kinds of thoughts, very
Trying to numb,
negative.
trying to get numb again. Right.
Trying to not only get
Yeah.
numb, but I mean, I was like, why even am I living? What is the
Right.
purpose of this world? Uh, the trauma was so large that, uh, I went into terrible anxiety, which I'm still working with today.
Sure. I can't
You
even
know,
imagine. Yeah. I
yeah, I
cannot.
wake
I
up.
cannot fathom what you've been through. To be honest with you.
It's inconceivable, yet somehow I still have to live through it.
Mhm.
And I have to be here today talking to you so that when we have someone that's listening saying, okay, well, what is the answer? Where do you go from here? Um, what I have to do is make high vibrational choices. And that's what I'm conscientious of every day. Putting good thoughts in my mind, fighting the anxiety of feeling like, you know, I go into dark thoughts like, what was his last moments like? What did he did was it fear? I mean, all those thoughts that go into your mind,
Sure.
is his son really going to learn who his father is? All these fears that you get of the future, because the anxiety is the future, depression is the past. So, so I basically, suffer from a lot of that. I said, well, I got to make those high vibrational choices, and that is choosing no alcohol, no drugs, choosing to eat well, to help others. Every chance I get, I'm doing service to others.
So I think that. I mean, I know that. Trauma is not always about death, right? It's not something that's happening to us. It's something that happens around us, and we have all these other players in our life, right? That we have to help take care of. You have other children. You have your
Mhm.
wife. You have now you have a daughter-in-law. You have all these people that you need to stay at the top of your game to take care of those people, right?
Mhm.
Because you acting out with drugs, alcohol, not going to help anybody.
No.
This is the hardest part of trauma, and trauma could be kids going through a divorce when they're younger, or you know you lost your parents when you were young and you handled it incorrectly. Probably, let's say I
Mhm.
lost my dad at 19. We lost a grandchild, a 3-year-old grandchild last year too, and we have to figure out a way to cope with all this. And it's not, there's no secret sauce. There's no one way to do it. We all have our own way of dealing with this. Are you, if I ask a question and you don't want to answer, just
Ask. I'm an
wave
open
me
book.
off, right? So I think that everybody that gets is born should have a therapist like immediately, with them, right? Somebody to talk to, somebody to, um, especially men, because we are not very good sometimes at, you know, talking about these things or whatever. Are you getting any therapy?
Oh yes.
Okay, good.
I have literally two therapists. One is a trauma uh, grief therapist,
That's good.
and she lost her husband, and she is phenomenal. A lot many years ago, he really helps us. She's been working with our entire family. We do group sessions and individuals, and she's been a lifesaver. Lori, it's been just wonderful. This
I know
lady.
there's times when you just, I mean, you want answers, right? Obviously, we all want answers.
Hmm.
I kid a lot that God's got a very unique sense of humor, right? Not that any of this is funny, but that He puts us in situations that we're not sure what the answers are, but we have to have faith, right? This is what faith is all about.
Hmm.
Believing things are going to be right, even though we can't see that right out of the gates.
Correct.
And it's difficult, and we talked last week a little bit, and I always tell people, look, if you got to sit in a corner and cry for 10 minutes, you got to sit in a corner and cry for 10 minutes. That's what you got to do.
Hmm.
It's not that you're weak, it's that you need to kind of get back to performance, right? You still have people to take care of. You have a business you run,
Hmm.
you have employees, like I said, your wife, your children, and it's very difficult to get your head wrapped around all this. And I lost my both my parents now. I've lost, grandpa. We lost people during COVID. A friend of mine just lost his best friend and his brother within 2 days,
Hmm.
in December, right before Christmas. And I'm like, man, it's just nuts. And I know you guys are struggling, but I also know that you're people of faith,
Hmm.
and you're, yeah.
We, what's really bailed us out, has kept us together. So we were a very tight family.
Hmm.
When this happened, we rented a hall for 160 people here in Poway, the city that we live in, and 200 over 250 people showed up, and we have received so much love and help. But as the person that I am, when I was young, I also would write a lot. I've always written a lot, songs or just lyrics or just poems. And I've written tremendous. The problem is I can't share them with the people I love the most because the poems, they're difficult.
You don't want to
They're
break their
difficult
heart, right?
poems.
Yeah.
They're poems. They're poems that I sometimes I write about, my my grandson having a dialogue with me in the future, and that dialogue dealing with very sensitive subjects about his father, and him teaching me a lesson about acceptance and about really, living, accepting with the way the world turns, which
Right.
is hard for us human beings because we think we have some kind of control. We think that we can, control things that are even death. It's so funny. We
That's a
really
great
think.
sentence, that we think we have a lot of control. So I have two grandchildren
Uh-huh.
that live with me, and one of them lost her father in 2019. She was only 6 years old
Worth it.
at the time. And it's been so we've gotten therapy for her, and I'm very open with her about things, right? I talk about her dad a lot. I talk about whatever, and
Mhm.
it's difficult, but she's doing great. And so I guess what I'm saying is there's great light at the end of the tunnel for what's his name, Kaio.
Caillou is
Yeah.
Caillou is Japanese. My son was infatuated with Japanese, but also it's a name in Portuguese, and his wife is Brazilian, which
Okay.
has, Portuguese language, if anything. She's
But I
more.
think that you're gonna, as I've gone through this the last 5 years or 6 years with her, there's definitely a dialogue that you'll open with him that'll be special to you guys, right?
Oh, can't wait,
Yeah.
can't wait. We
And
can't wait.
I have 8 kids, so two stepdaughters and 6 children. And sometimes feel disconnected from them. You will not be disconnected from this grandchild because you're gonna you're gonna have a dialogue about your beautiful son, right? So that's a very positive thing to look forward to, in my opinion.
I- in my book, the biggest thing I got to look forward to, Ed, is honestly giving him. There's the only way he's going to know my son is through me, because my son and I shared a very uh, different relationship than a lot of father son. So when people have used the word envy about our relationship, I think it's more they admired it because
Sure.
we went to a Super Bowl, two NBA, one NBA Finals, two NCAA championship games. We went, I mean, to the Super Bowl. I think I mentioned it. World Series, two different World Series. I mean, things that are those kind of things. We also would share rides together where we would just sing songs
Yeah.
left and right. You know, because he was an old soul. He knew all the 70 rock. He loved
Right.
it, and so we had a really good relationship. We He also ran the company that we have. Today, I'm trying to work with the company, but it's very difficult because everything has his fingerprint and
Sure.
everything had, and of course people rather deal with him than with me because he was really one of these incredible understanding persons that would negotiate from a point of even if he had the strength he would always do things fair,
Right.
you know, and that's really a beauty thing, a beautiful thing that Alejandro had, that Alex had, that he worked with. When we look at our life, I've got to do that, show that to Kyle, show him, the humanity of his father, the kindness that he had, the way he lived life, which was always a lesson, which we tend as men to put a lot of pressure on us,
Hmm.
and we tend to sometimes unjustifiably we feel that we have to carry the weight of everything, and my son had that, he had that situation that he really he, he put a lot of weight on him,
Yeah.
but he also lived life and he knew how to enjoy life and how to do, he would tell me 5 o'clock I'm done, and that's something I never knew how to do. To me, I never stopped working, but because that's what I saw from my father. And he learned better. He said, I'm gonna cut off at 5 o'clock, Dad, as it's time to spend with my wife and my child. And
Nice.
even though he was only 2 months old when this happened, but he was, just that kind of dedicated person. So
Well,
I know I got to
you and
teach
your
that.
wife did that, by the way. You understand, you taught him that.
Yeah, yeah, but he ran with it, which
Yeah.
he ran, I always, people many times tell me did such a great job raising him. And I always say, so did my parents with me. And I think in life, Ed, you're defined how the choices that you make when things are rough. You know,
Sure. Of course.
When things got rough for me, I ran. I it was hard. It was very difficult as a teenager. I didn't have any of the tools.
Right.
Today, I can tell you, meditation, breathing, exercising at the right time, not doing alcohol, not drinking, not eating bad food. All those decisions makes you a better person. You still have pain, but at least I'm able to deal with it and I'm able to discuss it in a civil manner without having to numb myself out.
And this is what this podcast and your podcast is going to do for that generation that's younger than us that needs to learn. These are those lessons they're going to learn. So, um, and that's all. That's it's hard to tell people how to deal with something because I'm going to deal with it a little bit different than you, and this person's
Mhm.
going to deal with a little bit. But this is good advice. This is what my podcast is about. This is what this is I want my superpower to be where I can help younger people and try to deal with this. So the hardest part about my grandchild is I have these two kids that have to deal with this, right? And they have two other kids, and they're doing phenomenal, and they have therapy, they're doing all those things. But you never want your kids to go through any pain, right? We want to stop it. We know they have to go through it, but we're trying to prevent it.
Mhm.
Like we don't want them to go through the same shit we went through, right? So we grew up in a whole different time, dude. We're cut from a different cloth than these kids
Mhm.
these days are, probably because it's our fault. But my son, like your son, I have one son, is that he'll take that weight on his shoulders too. And he does, that's what he does that for his kids. So um, you should be proud of yourself for that,
Okay.
that you taught him that. So
Thank
I
you.
reached out to a couple of my daughters, said, "Hey, did you know Alex Saenz?" And oh yeah, they had high regard for him, by the way.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Yeah. Yeah. The funny thing is, Alex had friends from all walks, and people that knew him, they saw that ability that he had to just choose a village, so to speak,
Sure.
of all these nice people from all kinds of races and all kinds of religion. Just amazing how broad the spectrum of his village was. It was a very amazing. The only common thread is that everybody was a good person.
Yeah.
Everybody had a good heart, and that was the key that with him.
So,
You know,
I
that
have a
that was the
pretty, I have nothing close to a growing up experience that you had. I have a different experience,
hmm
uh, but nothing like I grew up here, right? So I've lived in San Diego since I was 3 months old. I was born in Seattle, but we moved here because my mom hadn't seen the sun in 6 months, and she says I can't live here in Seattle anymore. So we moved down here. So I grew up in San Diego, and we were very poor when we were young, and we didn't know we were poor, right? We just hung out. I've talked
yeah.
about this on my podcast before. Nobody knew we were all poor, so it didn't matter, you know. And I moved to
hmm
Poway in 1974 when I was 12 years old, and then started
hmm
seeing people with money, and I'm like, well, shit, I want to be like that guy. I want to drive that car, right?
Yep.
And I went to Poway High School. My wife went to Poway High School. Six of my kids went to Poway High School and graduated. You're right. It's a great community, and we have a lot of mutual friends. So, do you live across the street from Cynthia? Uh,
Yes, he's just moving,
she's
unfortunately.
moving, right? So, and I know all those people up in that
Yeah,
area
we did her
because,
solar and yeah, for
right?
years and yeah.
Yeah, so sorry, because my kids went to, and I remember Paige was a friend of your daughter's, and she used to come over to your house and
hmm
go swimming and whatever. So,
All the time. Yeah.
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 So, listen, I mean, we could probably go on for hours. You and I are little chatterboxes, right? We could probably talk for like 2 hours, and we wouldn't even know it was 2 hours. But I'm looking forward to your podcast. I
Thank
think
you.
what you're doing here, um, you're taking something horrific and making it good, right? We have There's statistical information that says it's 1 in 400 trillion chance that we're even born. And some scientists say 1 in 258 quadrillion that we're even born.
Mhm.
So your son was a miracle, right?
My
And that's going to
grandson.
continue through you and through your other kids and through your wife and through his son. He's going to continue, right, to be a miracle.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that in life, Ed, you know, I can tell you that there's no handbook
No,
for how to treat your child and raise your child correctly. There's no handbook on how to be a good how to deal with grief.
yeah,
What I'm doing with our podcast, which like it's gonna call it's the name of it is Healed After Loss, and because it's about healing. We talked about it. Loss comes in many spectrums. It comes in and you may lose a girlfriend when you're a teenager, and that could be devastating.
sure.
In Poway, we've had the misfortune of losing a lot of young kids. I mean,
Yes.
you
One
know,
year we lost about 4 or 5,
I remember that year. It's like it
Yeah.
was like they would put it would become a ritual of putting those cups with the name of the
Yep.
child that passed away, and it was like people from enlarged hearts, people from gruesome acts of evil,
Right.
all kinds of drunk driving and just every which way imaginable. We were losing children, but there's really no manual, like I said, for all that. So what do we do? What is our job of our podcast or this podcast? Is if we talk about it and if we learn something, if I have something that I could share with your audience is to really get those life tools and teach them to your children.
Right.
Um, Life tools of breathing correctly, doing deep breathing, which lowers your heart rate, helps you with anxiety. Things about working diligently on making mindful choices of health, of being loving, being grateful. Because when you're in a grateful state, you can't be a miserable person.
Right.
You can't be an angry person. You're walking around saying, "Thank God for this country. Thank God for the air. Thank God for the food." There's just so many things to be grateful for. But I want to share something that we learned because this life is a series of us teaching and learning, right? We adopted children, three children, four total, when they were older children that their parents their mother got killed and their father was in jail, and they were going to separate the kids. We heard, we took them in. Okay. Alejandro gave up his room, my daughter too, and they went, children, the boys with him, the girls with her. Okay. They loved it. And now all of a sudden, instead of two, there was, six of them.
Right.
One of the children, they were all dramatic with what they went through. And one of the children used to cry. And my daughter, my wife was talking to her, say, of course, he was 8 years old when this happened. The other was 10, 12, 14. And she said, the last time I saw my mother, I wanted to hug her. And she said, I don't have time. And
Wow.
she left. And from that day on, we were always saying, I love you. We always give a hug. And my son, last time I talked to him was a Saturday before this happened.
Hmm.
And I told him clearly, I love you. And that's, to me, those little things are so important that we take the time to not be in a rush to give that hug, to
Yeah.
say I love you to the people that we cherish, and don't go to sleep angry, and don't, uh, really realize that tomorrow is not guaranteed
No,
to
it is
any of
not.
us.
You know, we do the same thing in our family, when we get off the phone or whatever we do. And I warn my kids in this way that time goes by extremely fast. So I have a daughter that's going to be 39 this year. And I always tell my kids, you do not realize how fast time's going to go. I feel like, and I can remember being 36 yesterday, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was like nothing. I cannot believe how, and when I have to tell people how old I am sometimes, I have to double check and go, Jesus Christ, am I seriously that old? I was just had a baby yesterday, right? And now I have adults that have babies. And we have a lot of photos. Like I probably have literally 10,000 photos at our house, and the kids don't want them. Like they don't want to store them. But sometimes I'll just go to those boxes and look at when they were little, and I can remember the smell of that room. I can remember everything. Of course, I'm gushing tears when I'm looking at them.
Of course.
And I hope they're grasping the fact of how fast life moves, right? When Father Michael, when he came to St. Michael's, or excuse me, when he came to St. Gabriel's, I met him the week he was there. It was 1999, same year my wife and I met. And we've
Yeah.
been married now almost 22 years together for 26 years.
Hmm.
It just flew by. And you're right. We need to be conscious of those things. And it's just going through life with a smile on your face instead of being grumpy, right? Just as silly as that sounds, you never know what people are going through when you meet them. You never know what's going on in their life. The checker at the grocery store, she's not friendly that day. You never know what's going on in her back life, right? And no one knows with you, right? So if you meet someone at a coffee shop, they don't know what you just went through in the last 4 months, 5 months, whenever the time
Hmm.
frame was. So we need to get back to being a little more compassionate. I think just in general, and we've had a lot of separation with different political parties over the last 15 years. And I don't care. I don't give a shit. I hate politics,
Me too.
but we have definitely, we've changed the way we view other people.
The way we treat
COVID,
other
yeah,
people.
COVID was
We're
bad.
not tolerant.
I
Yeah.
know. And we need to be, and listen, I'm not saying I am tolerant, by the way. I'm, I almost hate driving in my neighborhood because it's just the way I am. It's something I need to work on. I'm not calling, the pot black. I'm just saying that I need to work on it too. We all need to have more compassion. Everybody's got some burden, some trauma they've gone through, and we need to be cognizant of that when we're talking to them and communicating.
And there's been events in my life that like the day that Sunday morning when they called me. I was, if you could picture, I'm driving Palmerado Road to
Yep.
Einstein Bagel. I'm a block away from Einstein Bagel. So I turn around. As I'm speeding back, this gentleman was crossing the street. I honk at him so that he stops and I go. And I could see him visibly upset.
Right.
And in my heart, I felt like saying, do you understand that I know there's a tragedy that just happened to my family?
Right.
I'm sorry that you had to stop your walk across the street so that I can go by. But it really it made me think later on. I was reflecting. There was a time when the children were little, and this guy was really angry with. For I apparently I must have cut him off. I must have done something, and he was sticking out his finger, screaming. And so, me being my young 30s, to mid 30s, when I first moved out here, I wanted to, I wasn't going to take it. So I go like, "What's your problem?" Right? I looked at my kids, and they were petrified.
Hmm.
So I stopped immediately and I said, poor, I told him, listen, poor guy. I don't know where this came from because it wasn't me, but
Right.
my guardian angel came and told to tell the children, well, let's pray for this gentleman. And they go, why? I go, because he must be having something really bad happen in his life.
Yeah.
So we prayed, and I remember thinking, I told my wife, I don't know what the hell just happened, but instead of me getting angry with this gentleman, I prayed for him, and I'm so happy because honestly, he must have been having something bad in his life. But if we took things like that more often, like
Sure.
you just said, when somebody does something mean to you and understand who knows what that person's going through, or something empty-headed. We were in LA because that's where my wife and I met, and we went back when this happened. And the first time we went out to eat after this, what we call the event, when my son ascended, we were in a restaurant and my wife starts bawling, crying.
Yeah.
And it was the W in on Sunset in LA. And I stood up and the waiter came up. He said, "Is everything all right, sir?" And I said, "Listen, I don't know how to tell our son passed away very recently, and this is the first time we've gone out. And now I don't have to fight not to cry because it was so emotional. This is a woman that I saw hugging my son for 4 hours that day. Dad. She gave birth. You and I, as men, will never understand what it's like to lose a child.
Yeah.
It's my son, my best friend, but this was her baby.
Sure.
So that day, she's uncontrollable. The point of my story is that I had compassion for her, but when we ordered, and this is a very expensive restaurant, and he came up, he said, everything's on the house. And I said, no, 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 we can't do that. We didn't want, he goes, sir, what you guys are suffering, I saw it. I want to help. And the guy did something. I'll never forget that gentleman. I'll never forget his act of kindness. And, if we're conscientious of that for other people, that guy changed my life. I mean, that day, as miserable as we felt, we saw goodness in another human being.
Yeah.
And that's all we got to give to each other here on earth, Ed. That's it, man. If we treat each other with kindness and we make the right choices, and I'm not saying I have any answer to why this happens to any of us. I'm not special than anybody else. I have a good friend whose daughter went to dinner and we left her house and skidded on the road and died. 19 years old.
Yeah. I know.
And you listen to those things and you go, where's the logic? Where's God? Where's that? We can't control that. What we can control is how we behave and how we react to this tragedy. And that's all I wanted to really, the most important, and I thank you for letting me share this, our story is, is, is for us to be, be human, treat others with kindness, make good choices in your life and live a life with gratitude and love.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
that's all I can. That's
yeah,
my message.
it's just processing. Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but listen, I appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
know I'm looking forward to your podcast coming out, and I know that you have a lot of people in your corner, and that's awesome.
Thank you, Ed.
And yeah, so I'll just do an outro. Just stay on for a second. Let me do this.
You
So this
got
is
it.
the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. I'll do another one soon.